This is Donald J. Trump, President of the United States. Mark Thompson is a huge loser. His show, very bad, weak, soft. But if you're interested in crap and you're a communist, you can go to edge-show.com. I don't recommend it.
You're listening to The Edge with Mark Thompson.
Hello and welcome. This is an episode of our show where we will lead with our regular, J. Elvis Weinstein, the original voice of Servo on Mystery Science Theater, and he's a documentary filmmaker and comic. He's a super smart guy, and we toss it around for a few minutes before we bring on the tennis champion, Brian Teacher, who won the Australian Open in 1980. And Brian, who came up at a time of John McEnroe and Jimmy Connors, has a perspective on tennis back from those days on to today. And he talks about that high-profile time in tennis, and he has some stories from that world, and his personal life during that time is wild also. It's a really cool conversation with Brian Teacher. I'm very excited you're here for this episode because that's a cool conversation, and we'll start with that. I think that whole thing runs about a half hour, and then Ron Placone joins us. Ron is a comic and sort of a current events topical comic, and he has a daily news show that he does. Plus, he's leading a charge to bring back net neutrality. Net neutrality has been wiped away. So the idea of a neutral net, that is one that comes into you at the same speed regardless of what you are Googling or searching for or watching or listening to, that neutral net is in the process of being changed. So demands to return net neutrality are part of a movement that Ron Placone is leading, and he has a special event, and we talked to Ron about that. And finally, John Kobylt from the John and Ken Show, the dominant afternoon talk show that airs in Southern California on KFI Radio. John comes through because his Fox News Channel appearance, during which he was supposed to be debating socialism and its relevance as an issue in the upcoming presidential election, was interrupted suddenly. And we explain why and how. And it was interrupted by a guy who's a colleague of mine at KGO Radio in San Francisco. And so John called me and said, hey, my appearance on Fox was interrupted by your colleague. I said, well, I don't really know him that well, but why don't you come to the studio and we'll have the conversation about socialism on the podcast? And that's what we do. Plus, we play the moment that John's appearance on Fox was interrupted as well. That'll be the final conversation in this episode. So we start with J. Elvis and our conversation with Brian Teacher, then Ron Placone, and then John Kobylt. There should be timings indicated in every episode. If you look down, you can see which conversation starts at what time. So if you're interested in one conversation more than another, you can go to that one. But we always encourage you to listen to the entire program, to drink in the magic of the entire episode. And speaking of magic, those of you who support this show with subscriptions, with positive reviews, with 5-star reviews on iTunes and elsewhere. I say iTunes. I know iTunes is going away, but wherever you take in this podcast on whatever platform, we're on iHeartRadio, we're on YouTube, we're on Stitcher, we're in the Apple universe. However you get it, thank you for your support. Thank you for the subscriptions. It just helps keep us a little bit higher in the search queues. And those who've left us something in our virtual tip jar with the PayPal link, you are generous, and every dollar stays with the podcast to compensate our small and underpaid staff and to keep the lights on. And finally, if you're going to shop Amazon anyway, please do it through our website, edge-show.com. We get a little piece of whatever you spend. If you go into an episode, you go anywhere on our website, edge-show.com. You'll see an Amazon banner. It'll say like Shop Amazon or Amazon Shopping, or it might just have the word Amazon there. If you click on that, it takes you to Amazon, same Amazon as usual, but we get a little piece of whatever you spend. We can't see what you bought. We can't see what you spend, but we get a check at the end of the month saying, hey, look, these people must have gone through your website because you get this. And it helps support this podcast ecosystem. When we started this podcast 6 years ago or whatever, there were so many podcasts already. And now there are so many podcasts times 3. So I appreciate your support. I know I say it every episode, but I say it because it's true. Anyway, thank you for being here and all the ways you show us love. Let's get started.
This is The Edge.
The advantage, it means.
Hey, look, I just spit on me for no reason.
That's horrible.
Is there some comfort in uncertainty, do you think?
You're a degenerate.
Because Australian Shepherds need action.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is The Edge.
That's a self-loathing term that I use.
Oh, got it.
edge-show.com. Stupid. Why is there a dash?
Give me a level check, please, J. Elvis Weinstein.
Level check from J. Elvis Weinstein coming right at you.
J. Elvis
65
Weinstein.
degrees here in the Bay Area.
Josh, feel like I haven't seen you in a couple of weeks because I haven't seen
It's
you in
right
a couple
about
of weeks.
that. Yeah, it's exactly 2 weeks, Mark.
What's the situation on the comedy album?
The comedy album is coming out July 12th. Pre-sale July 1st.
How does that work?
I don't know. You can buy it July 1st and it shows up July 12th. And if you're really stoned when you pre-order it, then it like feels like a gift just dropped out at you.
Oh, I see. You forget. I do that all the time. I go, Amazon box. What did I order?
I've got some mystery boxes showing up in my house.
It's never anything you really,
I haven't done anything super stupid,
That's one of the reasons I'm glad iTunes is going away, because I used to have a lot of cocktails, and then I'm listening to music, and I go, and it's nostalgia that gets you.
Right.
And you go, oh, my God, I'm going to download.
I'm going to recreate my playlist from 1967.
I can't live without the entire Neil Young Harvest album.
That's right. I'm doing 1910 Fruit Gum Company deep cuts.
And so you end up, that's the immediate gift paid off the next morning when you realize you've spent $115 buying a lot of songs you'll never listen to again.
Yeah.
Now
See you on Shuffle, guys.
See you on Shuffle. I understand why they're doing what they're doing. That is, Apple's getting rid of iTunes.
Right.
Because it's about streaming now. So, those of us who bought that Neil Young Harvest album or whatever, the people who actually buy downloaded music are just 30% of the overall Apple economic model.
Right.
But I just am unclear as to exactly what they're going with. It's three different things. Like this podcast appears on their podcast platform.
Right. Yeah, I think it's going to be as simple as that. There'll be one app for podcasts, one app for movies and TV, and one app for music.
Okay. Now I get it. Thank you.
Sure. I have Steve Cook like clarity, or whatever Cook, his name, Tim Cook like clarity.
Did you see on Netflix the series Dead to Me?
I have not, no.
I really recommend it.
Do you? Okay.
It's really good.
Yeah.
And I'm not a binger per se,
Right.
I don't like binge, but I binged.
What is the show?
It's Christina Applegate.
And Linda Cardellini.
Yeah.
Yeah. You had me at Linda Cardellini with that one.
So good. And I recommend it when I'm recommending it to you, I'm really recommending it to our listeners because I think it's a recommendable
good
entertainment experience.
Yeah, I definitely want to see it because I love Linda.
I Love Linda was one of my favorite shows.
Yes. I Love Linda. Da, 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 starring Ricardo Montalban. Da, 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 and Debbie Reynolds. Da, 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 da.
What else do I want to ask you about?
You're a radio guy, Mark. Come on.
How's Andy Kindler doing?
Andy Kindler's well.
Yeah, what's he working on?
Well, at this time of year, it starts to become the State of the Industry address.
Oh, that's right. Now, you usually write him some stuff for that.
I am writing with him again this year, yes.
So what Andy Kindler does...
And this year, I forced him to pay me, so I'm trying.
It's nice. So in 15 seconds or less, Andy Kindler does a thing. He does it at the Montreal Comedy Festival. I think that's where he does it, right? Is it Montreal?
Yes, at the Just for Laughs Fest.
And he, in essence, reviews the state of comedy and certain comedic projects and even certain comedians, right?
Yeah. He's gotten less vicious on the personal targets.
Yeah.
Partially because of his psychology and partially because I've been helping write and I'm not as vicious. I tend to go for the funny punchline instead of the angry funny, angry burst of attitude. I don't feel like I have your full attention, Mark.
No, you do, actually. Trying to get the number. That's what I'm doing.
Okay, so at least you admit it.
Let's get a contestant on the line, J. Elvis.
Let's do it.
All right. Is this the table that ordered dial tone?
Hi there.
Hi, Brian Teacher.
How are you, Mark?
I'm here with J. Elvis Weinstein.
Hello.
Hi, Jay.
You're the first tennis player we've had on the show. Am I right, J. Elvis?
I think so.
Yeah.
At least professional.
Oh, cool.
Right. I've always been a tennis fan, and it's so cool to talk to somebody whose career just, in my judgment, exploded at a time in tennis that a lot of other stuff was exploding in tennis. For people who don't know, you won the Australian Open.
Yes, in 1981. It was when it was played over Christmas and the New Year.
Okay.
Back in the day.
They played it on grass then?
Correct, yes. There were three majors that were played on grass, yes.
And now the only major that's played on grass is Wimbledon, I suppose, huh?
Correct, right, yeah. That's it.
Really? So the U.S. Open was played on grass initially?
Yes, U.S. Open, Wimbledon, and Australia, and they just phased it out. It's like a dying breed, right? But the grass is so traditional at Wimbledon. It's such an amazing venue with all that history. It's incredible.
Why did tennis decide to get rid of the grass, just while we're talking about it?
I think it's not a practical surface. I mean, you play on it, like, for instance, at Wimbledon, you play on it for 2 weeks, and the grass is just pretty much destroyed for the rest of the year. They cut it every day, basically, and and then they move the lines around on the court, so they space the court so that, you kind of get rid of some of the bad areas. But the grass over at Wimbledon is pretty amazing. It's really, they've got it down to a science. The bounces and stuff are so true. It's pretty amazing. That's why you see guys that are kind of backcourt specialists now, winning the tournament, because the bounces are so amazing.
Well, that's something else that's changed in the game of tennis. The time of the bomber serve and volley, which is really kind of the time that you were coming up, on grass, right? Wasn't it a serve-intensive game then?
There were a lot more serve and volley players, yes. I mean, today there's nobody pretty much. I mean, maybe Isner is a serve and volleyer, and even he stays back. He's 6'11", some foot, and even he stayed back on a lot of times on his first serve. So you're 100% right. There's not many guys doing it today.
As a fan of the game, but also someone who was such an integral part of the game for so long, does that make for better tennis, those longer rallies?
I think it has made for longer rallies. However, the game's almost gotten too, homogenous, that it's like, everybody's just playing in the backcourt. Now they got big serves, big forehands, big backhands, and they just can run around, forever. So when you do get to see a guy like now Federer, who basically – he's one of the guys that has a full court game, and he can come to net, and he can serve ball a little bit. He mostly stays back, but he tries to move his way into net and cut the court down. And even now Nadal comes in quite a bit in volleys and has a pretty good volley. But on the whole, a lot of the guys on the tour, most of the pros don't volley all that well. It's a little bit of a lost, art.
Yeah, that was a great part of the game. Of course, for me, that serve and volley was gorgeous to watch. I mean, and so effective. And guys with those quiet hands, and the McEnroes, the Edbergs of the world, it was just spectacular, It
was. Yeah, it was amazing feel with those guys. Great volleys, yeah.
It also seems like in those days there were more players that played both singles and doubles, which would bring more volleying into your game naturally.
Yeah, 100%. Everybody used to grow up playing singles and doubles. And, pro tennis started around 68, with Arthur Ashe beat Tom Ocker in the finals at the U.S. Open. It was the first Open major. It was $14,000 to win it. And, it just, slowly prize money started increasing. But even when I was playing, basically, in the late 70s and the 80s, I got to be like 5 or 6 in the world in doubles, and I ended up quitting because I was doing well in singles, and there was no money in the doubles. We'd split like $9,000 to win a tournament. It just got ridiculous. You'd wait around all day, to play your doubles match, sometimes even into the late night, and you'd have to come back and play singles the next day, and it just didn't make any sense. So eventually, all the top players pretty much phased out of doubles. It just didn't make any sense anymore. And of course, the prize money kept getting more and more and more and more. And even today, with the prize money's like at $3 million to win a major, who's going to compete in doubles if you're a serious contender for that? And the 3 out of 5 sets, and they're so physically demanding and draining with these guys. They're such amazing shape today and strong and all hitting the ball and running like crazy that you need every ounce of energy just for the singles.
Now, that's a really good point. I didn't think it really carves you up, that doubles, and to go through all of that and still have to play a singles match? Yikes.
Yeah, it's rough. And then it's not even just that you're out there for another 2.5 hours longer. It's that you could be at the courts all day long after you've played. And then so it makes for a really long day. The guys just stopped it.
Give us a sense of the universe you were in at that time, what it was like. Who was coming up? Who was?
Well, McEnroe, Connors, Lendl, Borg, and then kind of, at the tail end when I was playing Wilander, Edberg. Wilander was before Edberg. So Wilander won his first French Open. He was 17, and then I played him a couple weeks later at Wimbledon. I managed to beat him, but he was very young and just coming up. But that was, he was an incredible athlete. That guy. I mean, he told me he played hockey and tennis until he was 15 years old. He played tennis maybe 3 times a week and 3 times a week hockey, and then he decides at age 15 and a half to focus on tennis full time, and then he wins the French Open like when he's 17.
Wow.
I mean, that's some serious athletic ability there, right?
And so of the big three of that era, I guess I would call them, the Connors, McEnroe, Borg, who would be the one that you would most dread facing?
Well, then there was Lendl came along.
Lendl too, right?
I mean, don't forget, they all. The amazing thing is they all hated each other, so it was all fun to watch them play each other. But as far as those three, I probably I had wins over. I was able to beat Lendl, Connors, never beat McEnroe, and never beat Borg. But probably, it's funny. Like point for point, Connors was probably, the fiercest competitor. He wouldn't give anything away. And same with Lendl. He was sometimes hard to win points against. And the other guys could kind of, they weren't as good as returning serve as like, Connors and Lendl. So you could always kind of, if you serve in volleyball, you could hold your serve more. But they were all just so amazing, all in their own way, just incredible competitors, incredible heart. They hated to lose.
Right.
And it was a pretty amazing era to play in.
The thing I always felt about Lendl, Wimbledon, which was the tournament that he wanted to win, right? Wasn't that? Yeah. And I'd heard that he kind of organized his whole life, his training. I mean, everything was organized for that. That now, today's Wimbledon, the way it has changed and tennis has changed, take that game that he had, put it in today's Wimbledon, and he could win.
Well, in the day and age, if the bounces were better and stuff, he'd probably have a better chance of winning on today's courts. Of course, then you got the competition of today's players, which everybody, the top guys are just, I think day in and day out, these top 3 or 4 guys are just incredible, with their records and stuff. Though, our guys were they were all competitive. I mean, when you're at the top of the game, from generation to generation, the great guys at the top, they're always great no matter when. We played with, moved from wooden rackets into this next generation of, mid-sized rackets and graphite, and now they're morphing, more and more with different kinds of materials and fiberglass and graphites and the strings and stuff, and the amount of power and spin is huge today compared to when we were playing. And so the strokes and everything's evolved a little bit, the technique, and they got more power and spin and control on the ball.
And have training techniques radically changed the game, or is it more equipment that's different between them?
Oh my gosh, these guys have. I mean, today because of the amount of money in it, they can all have. Anybody that's in the top 100, top 50 in the world, they all can travel with their own trainers, their coaches, and so their physios. All these guys are traveling with them. So yeah, they keep. They're not just pounding their body. Day in and day out, they're doing other training and fitness and stretching and stuff to keep their body from breaking down. And I was doing yoga back, in the day because I had a problem with my back, but there was hardly anybody, stretching back in the late 70s, early 80s. I mean, everybody kind of, I was from California doing my yoga, and everybody kind of thought I was a little bit of a freak. Now today, of course, everybody kind of does some kind of yoga or some kind of stretching just to keep your body limber and going.
They bring their yoga person with them.
Yeah, the yoga guy, the physio, everybody. They have a whole team. These guys have teams with them. We were lucky to be able to have a coach once in a while, right? Travel with us.
Is that right? When you traveled to some of these various tournaments, you really didn't have any posse at all with you?
No, I had nobody. It was after I won the Australian Open, I started traveling with the coach for about a year and a half, 2 years. But before that, nobody. Just you just travel with your buddies on the tour. And there's something kind of cool about that too. By the way, it's just like you're on your own and you're just with the guys on the tour, and just it's a different day and age. It wasn't as serious as it is today. There wasn't as much money. Of course, we took it seriously, but we had a lot of fun at the same time. I think the guys in those days, we could blow it off and have a little more fun. It's too much money in it today, and everybody, you have to take it really. There's too much riding on it, right? You're going to take it more seriously.
Well, I imagine today, I mean, you can be a player in a tournament and not ever talk to another player throughout the tournament.
Yeah, I don't think you could be. I don't think it's like that, though. I mean, there's a pretty good camaraderie on the tour, with the guys anyway. I can't speak for the women because I'm not around it, but, the guys, there's a good camaraderie. They always pretty much get along.
And speaking of camaraderie, you were a Jewish athlete, which is always an exciting thing for me.
Cool.
And as a kid, it was always an exciting thing for me, especially being a Jew in Minnesota, where I grew up.
Yeah.
We had Rod Carew. He converted. That was it. But
I'll tell you my one Jewish story. So I'm playing Shlomo Glickstein at the U.S. Open. We're playing on the side courts, 3 out of 5. It's hot and humid, and the hamburger. Those are the days when they had the hamburger stands were next to the courts, and the hamburger smoke's blowing in your face when you're trying to breathe. At 4 all in the 5th set, and the planes are coming in, bombing your head. They're coming in so low from LaGuardia you can't think straight. And you got the whole crowd. Of course, Shlomo's from Israel, right? And so, all the Jews in New York are like screaming for him to win the match. Come on, Shlomo! And it's like, God, I didn't have my star David. I needed to show something. I wanted to say, I'm Jewish too. Come on, but I didn't say it. I'm trying to focus on the match, but it was a little frustrating to say the least. Oh. Nobody knew I was Jewish, and everybody knew he was Jewish.
Did you want to throw out like an oi on a double fault or something?
Yeah, I should have. I wasn't loose enough. I was too tight. That's the problem. I was too focused on the competition. Talking under my breath and stuff. Yeah.
God, that's very funny. That's really
Sometimes
great.
You can't figure out a way to get out of it, right? It was just stupid, right? I should have, 100% looking back.
Oh, that's so funny. I used to hear stories about, even at the highest levels of the tour, kind of to speak to your looseness or your reference to the fact that it was kind of a looser environment, that guys would go out and party. I mean, like even at the U.S. Open in New York, they would be partying the night before, and then they would have, serious, marquee matches the next day.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
You think that's overstated?
Yeah, I think it's overstated. Yeah, it's hard to party and play 3 out of 5 sets. I don't care who you are. You're not going to play well if that's what you're doing. It's impossible.
Does the fact that they play 3 out of 5, obviously tennis takes a physical toll, and right. I think that 3 out of 5, and I just watched the match the other night. It was 4 hours and 45 minutes, I think.
Yeah,
and I just think I know these guys are making a lot of money, but I also think they bring great value and put on a great show, and I just think that it chews up their body faster to play that much tennis. And
100% true. But here's the thing, about the sport in general, and this is the tradition of the sport, and where the men, are just so amazing that they realize that that at deep down, the true level of competition in these important championships, the majors, is a real contest of 3 out of 5 sets, not 2 out of 3. That basically you hit your stride when you're in good shape and stuff around the 3rd and 4th set. So, like you could get an unlucky break or something in a tiebreaker or this or that at 1 set all, and the match could be over. And it can happen in 5 sets, but it's just more a test of endurance and your skill level and everything involved. And so it's just, I don't think the men, they just wouldn't want it any different,
Wow.
It makes for a better competition.
That being said, you won your major in 3 straight.
Thank God, right?
Yeah.
So how did your life change as a result of tennis? After you won the Australian, you obviously love playing tennis. What happened to your life? Take us through kind of the beats of what happened sort of pre-winning that championship and post.
Well, oh my gosh, that's a whole nother story. Pre-champion, I was basically, at the time, I got married very young to another tennis player. And the most interesting, fascinating thing about possibly the whole story was that actually I'd been winning, like I was in the finals of 5 tournaments, and I'd lost in the finals every one. And the last one before the Australian, I basically had match points against a UCLA guy, Fritz Buning, young American, up and coming. So I lost the match. I had match points. I call my wife up at the time, and I say, I can't believe it. I lost again. She's back in L.A. And she says the first thing out of her mouth was, I want a divorce. Wow. And I said, what? I said, what are you talking about? A week ago you just talked about we should get a house in Beverly Hills or whatever, move and start a family. And I said, I'm not ready to start a family, but, maybe we could move to a different place. We were living in a condo. And she says, no, I want a divorce. And I said to myself, oh, my God, what's going on here? This doesn't make sense. You dating some other guy when I'm not around. Oh, no, we got problems, this, that. So I say to myself, there's no way I'm going to be able to play in this tournament. It's like in 3 days, the Australian Open. This tournament was in Sydney. It finished on Sunday. And I call up the tournament director, and I say, you know what? Colin Stubbs was his name. He was the tournament director of the Australian Open. I said, Colin, I just hurt my back at the Australian Open. I said, I got to pull out. I got to go home. He says, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that, Brian. So I packed my bags. I'm getting ready to go. I booked my flight. Literally 20 minutes before I'm literally going to walk out the door to grab the cab, I get a call from my ex-father-in-law saying, Brian, he says, you know what? I've been talking to Kathy. She said you pulled out. And I said, yeah, I don't know what's up with her. And he says, yeah, I agree completely. She's got something going with some other guy. If she doesn't behave herself, I told her I'm going to cut her out of the will. If you don't want to play, don't play, but don't come home. It's not going to do you any good. Why don't you go to Hawaii and just lie on the beach? So I thought about it for about 5 minutes, and I said, you know what? I said, if I go to Hawaii, I lying on the beach by myself, I think I'm going to lose my mind. I said, I'd be better off trying to stay in Australia. So about an hour later, I call the guy up at Colin, and I say, Colin, I said, is there any way I can get back into the tournament? He says, you know, I just did some acupuncture up on King's Cross, and my back's feeling better. And he says, Brian, he says, I just gave your spot away to a lucky loser. He says, but let me look at the draw. And he says, you know, I think there's one other guy pulling out, but I have to tell you, I'm not allowed to put you back in. If I do this, you have to promise you can't say a word of this to the ATP, which is our tennis association. And I said, oh, Colin, please. I said, let me back in. He said, okay, I'm going to do this. You can't breathe a word of this to anybody. So I ended up, was out of the tournament, got back in, and that's the tournament I won.
Wow. That's a great story.
And then I came home and got divorced. So I think we have to leave the rest of the story for another time because it's too long, everything else. Right?
Oh, that's just terrific, man. Absolutely awesome, though. What a great way to finish our conversation. I love it. You know, Brian, you're obviously a super smart guy, super athletic, talented guy. What a great little ride through what was. And tennis now, it's sort of a different sport in some ways. As you say, the technology and even the surfaces and a lot of things have changed. But you still go to some of the tennis matches of today?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I go to the U.S. Open pretty much every year, and you know, I see all my old buddies, and everybody just kind of congregates from the past, and you just, you know, you hang out, old stories, old friends, and go out and have fun at night. And you watch a little tennis, very little, but it's more about seeing your buddies basically that you hung around with for 10, 15 years.
Sure, it's an elite club.
It's a lot of fun. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Absolutely.
Brian Teacher, we love spending time with you. Wish you a lot of luck. And if there's anything else you're working on in the future that we can help get some word out about, please don't hesitate.
Yeah, I will definitely do that. Thank you.
Awesome, man.
Thanks. Nice talking to you.
He's a good guy, huh?
Yeah. Jew.
Yeah.
Was as high as 7th in the world at one time.
God. Was born in San Diego and is Jewish. Why did they put that into a Wikipedia profile?
Because the Jews go, I'm telling everybody.
Now, that was cool. Well,
how's San Francisco radio?
It's good. I really love it. I'll tell you one thing. You can let the Donald Trump is a corrupt, influence-peddling, incompetent, danger to America flag fly.
Yeah,
you don't
San
have to
Francisco
worry.
talk. Yeah,
I think I try to be fair always, you know.
Right.
I don't call the guy out on stuff he doesn't deserve to be called out on, but he's got a lot of room to be called out, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's just part of the show, though. We really don't do a lot of Trump. I try not to do a ton of it. But people do want to talk about it and hear about what's going on, so you have to give them some of it.
Right.
But mostly I try to do Bay Area stuff, and I do stories of interest and stories that are associated with lifestyle or intriguing stories, you know. Jay Elvis's podcast is called
Thought Spiral.
Thought Spiral.
With Andy Kindler.
And you've done now, I feel like you've done a couple of years of it now.
109 episodes so far.
Well, that's great.
Got a nice Gilbert Gottfried bump on the Thought Spiral.
Oh, good. Yeah. I'd get a TYT bump. When they mention on TYT, I get a bump.
Yeah.
But, you know, these audiences expect certain things. Like TYT expects me to be a politically outspoken, and sometimes we're doing a conversation with Brian Teacher about tennis.
Right.
You know. Anyway, great Jewish story, by the way.
It was, yes.
Nice job, Jay
Shlomo
Elvis.
Glickstein.
Come on.
Sounds like the sarcastic name for the Jewish tennis player. I'm playing against Shlomo Glickstein over here.
Yeah. Who are you, Shlomo Glickstein? Yeah. Why don't you put your bar mitzvah gifts off to the side during the match?
That's right. We're playing for serious gelt here.
Oh. All right, Josh.
I prefer to be called Shlomo Glickstein. All right, Mark. Thank you.
I love our time together. Until next time.
Toodaloo.
I want to thank you for supporting Mark Thompson here on the Edge Radio. Fantastic show with all the jokes and Jay Elvis, you know, and all the commentary and the politics and the bullshit. I love it. Edge-show.com. stupid. Why is there dash? edge-show.com.
You're listening to The Edge with Mark Thompson, edge-show.com.
Ron Placone joins us. Ron Placone is a comedian, a political commentator, does a daily show. What's a daily show called again, Ron?
Get Your News On with Ron, and it can be found at my YouTube channel, which is just youtube.com/Ron Placone.
Love that. And he's got his own website, ronplacone.com. But the reason he's on with us now is because Ron is doing something about something that has not been, to me, talked about enough, and that is net neutrality. Now, net neutrality, give us the quick thumbnail on it, and then tell me what's happened, because it has gone away.
Yes. So what net neutrality is, and first of all, we've had net neutrality since the advent of the Internet. We officially got it on the books since 2015, but we have not seen the effects of a post-net neutrality world yet, at least not, not extensively. And net neutrality just assures that the Internet remains free and open, that it's a common carrier, that it runs like flowing water. So a video from CNN.com or Get Your News On with Ron, they both load the same. There can't be prioritized fast lanes and slow lanes. You can't cut the Internet up like cable television 2.0 and charge people different fees for different sites. It just needs to be there and a free and open platform. Net neutrality assures all that. We got net neutrality on the books in 2015 when it was designated a Title II by the FCC, which people rallied for. People wanted that to happen.
It's not a partisan issue. I mean, net neutrality was threatened under Obama, wasn't it?
It was, and people rose to the occasion. And, yeah, you're right. It's not a partisan thing. It has support from people on all sides of the political aisle. Over 83% of citizens want net neutrality. We got it on the books in 2015. The Trump administration FCC repealed it in 2017. Since that happened, we've been battling it out in the courts. Here in California specifically, we have a really strong state net neutrality bill, and the cable companies and everyone, of course, wanted to take that to court, and the FCC, the Trump FCC, wanted to take that to court as well. So we're fighting it out right now. And on June 11th, I'm working with an organization called Fight for the Future, and what we're doing is we're having an epic all-day live stream in support of net neutrality. And epiclivestream.com is the website for that. And basically what we're doing, June 11th marks 1 year since net neutrality was repealed. So we're having an epic all-day live stream to say to people, hey, we still care about this, and we want to tell Congress and we want to tell the Senate that we demand net neutrality. Because the Save the Net bill, which was proposed in Congress, it did pass the House, but Mitch McConnell said, hey, this bill is dead on arrival. What that bill does is it reinstates net neutrality. So, Mitch McConnell and the Senate, they're not letting that bill move forward, but we're here to demand that, we demand net neutrality. We will not settle for less. They proposed a couple weaker bills, and we're saying that's not good enough either.
What's behind it? I mean, why get rid of net neutrality, a neutral net, a neutral Internet where all data is treated equally? Why get rid of that?
It's about money for big cable, basically. I mean, they would be able to price gouge consumers further. They'd be able to organize their duopolies further and kind of change the Internet as we know it and have more control over the medium and make more money off the medium. And as far as, there's a lot of misconceptions about net neutrality because of that. Some people say, net neutrality, it's not good because it gives the government control over the Internet. It doesn't do that. That's not what net neutrality is. It basically instills the FCC protections that the Internet is a free and open platform so that nobody has control over the Internet.
I thought they were making the argument also that somehow they wanted to get broadband to more places and that net neutrality, getting rid of net neutrality somehow would help get broadband to some of those places that didn't have it. In other words, some of these carriers, these broadband carriers, would have money to then do that.
Yeah, I have not heard that specific argument, but I can guarantee that is 100% not true. The way Comcast and AT&T and big cable works, if they don't want to go into an area because it may be more rural and they don't think they can make a lot of money there, they just straight up don't go there. And they just do that based on the profits that they can make. It has nothing to do with, they can't afford to go there. They're making money hand over fist. They're doing absolutely fine. They pretty much have more or less organized duopolies throughout the country. So that's just straight up misinformation. There's absolutely no truth to that whatsoever.
Of course, you're right. I mean, the fact that just a couple of companies own everything and own our means to access the Internet allows them to pretty much wreak havoc with our lives. And I'm talking about when wreak havoc, I'm talking about financial havoc. They can just pretty well charge whatever they want. And so now with the death of net neutrality, you have them able to impose fees on any number of websites, and you can, in essence, add monies to the bottom line of all of these companies that are already making money off of broadband access, because now they can charge so that that data from your website can get to the user more quickly. And so it's sort of like, if you want your data, you want your information to get out there quickly, you got to pay an additional fee.
Right, which means for independent media, that would kind of be the death rattle because, like independent outlets and alternative media, myself included, we couldn't afford to pay fees like that to have our content upload at a certain speed if we had to do something like that. Only the big corporate media could. So, it's about access. It's about the free flow of information. It's about control. At the end of the day, Mark, you touched upon broadband. What we really need is we need municipal broadband all across the country, which is something that Bernie Sanders has talked about. And what that would do is that would take the internet out of, big cable's hands and put it into the hands of cities and municipalities where it should have been in the first place. That's our long-term solution. But in the meantime, we really got to hold the line and protect net neutrality and get net neutrality back. And that's what we're trying to do on June 11th. EpicLivestream.com. Please do tune in, participate. You can ask questions. You can participate in the live stream, learn more about net neutrality and why it's so important and essential to our lives.
And who's participating in this? In other words, who's on your end? What will I see when I log into EpicLivestream.com?
Well, we're going to have a lot of guests throughout the day, Mark. I'm hoping you'll be one of them.
Stop right there. I mean, if I'm going to be one of them, I'm sure that'll be sufficient to bring everybody in.
There you go. Yeah, I'm going to be there. The deputy director of Fight for the Future and musician Evan Greer, she'll be there. It's going to be an amazing event. Just a big online party, really. So, yeah, that's EpicLivestream.com. That's a day of action for net neutrality. Myself, along with Fight for the Future, we're making that happen.
When it comes to getting independent information, really being able to knock around and find stuff out, watch shows that are offbeat, watch presentations that aren't necessarily in the mainstream and supported by big corporate entities, the only way you can do it is with a neutral net. The only way you can do it is with net neutrality. Absolutely. So it's a very important thing. And to the democracy, it's the most important thing. Unfettered access to information. So I think it's really important. As I say, RonPlacone.com is Ron's website, but it's EpicLivestream.com. And it will be an epic live stream on June 11th. What time does it start?
So it's going to start at about 8 in the morning. That's Eastern time. So it's going to go all day. It's going to start early in the morning, go all day. And, Mark, if you don't mind, if I could also mention, June 11th is the epic live stream for net neutrality. And then June 12th through 19th, if you're on the East Coast, I'm going to be touring there along with Graham Elwood, the political vigilante, for the Progressive Comedy Tour. We're hitting Boston, New York, New Haven, Philadelphia, D.C., Baltimore. So RonPlacone.com for all those dates. June 11th, of course, is the epic live stream, and EpicLivestream.com to participate in that event on the 11th.
Fall in love with Ron Placone with a live stream event on the 11th, and then see and meet Ron Placone live if you're on the East Coast on all those dates he mentioned after the live stream event. Wow, what a Ron Placone month I'm going to have. I love it. Thanks, Ron Placone.
Thanks so much, Mark.
If you enjoy listening to The Edge, support them by subscribing to The Edge on iTunes, Stitcher, and you can listen through the iHeartRadio app. Get busy listening.
Well, it was a 3-day gathering of the California Democratic Party in San Francisco, and there were a couple of key moments, and we're going to touch on one. And all of this is just to sort of open the door to a discussion with John Kobylt. John is from KFI Radio, which is the huge talk radio station in Los Angeles. It's the most listened to talk radio station in the country. John's heard every day on KFI. John doesn't share the same politics that I do, but I have a great fondness for John. He's a great communicator, and coming off a bizarre Fox News Channel appearance during which his segment was interrupted, I thought it a good opportunity for us to connect and sort of continue the segment that was interrupted on Fox News Channel and broaden the discussion about socialism in America. And now here he is, John Kobylt. John Kobylt, welcome.
Thank you very much.
You are the firebrand of KFI. You're the angry guy screaming into the mic. You've had it with these people and those people and these arguments and those arguments.
I've had it with you, too.
You really have patience for very little. So I'm watching Fox News Channel, the Death Star, this morning, and you're on.
Yeah, once every few weeks, I get to come on at 10:30 on a Sunday morning. I'm just filling time for them.
Listen, those 70-year-olds who watch Fox News Channel, they're not moving, so they're there.
They're up early. They get up at 4 in the morning. So
no, look, they have a huge audience. So anyway, you're on with a guy named Chip Franklin.
Yes.
He is the guy who does afternoons on KGO radio. I do 10 to noon on KGO in San Francisco. He's on the same station.
Yeah, that's why I called you right away after this happened.
Well, here's the thing. He's sort of the blowtorch of that station. The same way it could be argued you're the blowtorch of KFI. I think after that, the comparison breaks down.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying he's kind of the angry mouthpiece up there.
Yeah. But for people who didn't see it, what happened is we were being asked by the anchor, Leland Vittert, about our reaction to John Hickenlooper getting booed at the Democratic State Convention in California when he said we shouldn't be running on socialism. That's a loser. And everybody is booing. And then I came on and I said, well, Trump's going to play that a billion times, that little snippet. And, when you do these things, I did doing my end out of the LA bureau. And Chip was doing it from a San Diego bureau. And Leland Vittert is in New York or Washington, I forget which. So I'm not looking at the monitor.
So it's a triple box, you're saying?
Yeah,
like one of you is in... Yeah.
And I'm not looking at the monitor so I don't get distracted. And the monitor anyway is a few seconds behind reality. So it's the whole thing's a distraction. So I'm talking, and suddenly Leland interrupts me, and I don't really understand why. And then I look down at the monitor, and Chip is sitting there with a photo of John McCain in front of his face. And Leland looks confused and says, well, what are you doing? Something to the effect of, what are you doing? And Chip says, well, I just wanted, if the president is watching, this is a real, American military hero, like Pete Buttigieg, something along those lines. It was just completely out of left field.
And it's...
What a non sequitur.
It's a non sequitur during a conversation is substantively an interesting one. Like, how can the socialism, it's become sort of a dirty word, how can the Democrats avoid being painted in sort of a negative way with some of the policies that have been sort of suggested are socialist? Anyway, it wouldn't matter what you're talking about. It makes no sense. The guy's holding up this picture of John McCain. Here's what it sounded like. Here's the Hickenlooper thing first, and then we'll hear your reaction.
We know it is absolutely essential to beat Donald Trump, but it is not sufficient. We must address the divisions that are tearing us apart. We must tackle the kitchen table challenges facing Americans.
By the way, so far, you can't disagree with anything he said.
No.
Hasn't really said anything, specific.
No, it's a nice generic rhetoric, but he's correct on it.
Here it comes.
But let me be clear. If we want to beat Donald Trump and achieve big progressive goals, socialism is not the answer. I was reelected in a purple state in 2014, one of the worst years for Democrats in a quarter century. If we're not careful, we're going to end up helping to reelect the worst president in American history. I was one of only 2 Democrats that year to win in a swing state. And as governor, I worked with nonprofits and business, with Democrats and Republicans, and we achieved big progressive results.
Okay, so that's him speaking. Now.
So they played a clip of that on Fox News.
Right.
And then they asked me to comment on it, which I did.
We'll get to your comments, and then maybe you and I can kick it back and forth in a second. But this is just a weird moment. I mean, regardless, it has nothing to do with politics, just like bizarre. So you're there to talk about that.
Yeah.
And Chip Franklin's there to talk about that. And yet, this is what happens. We pick it up kind of in the middle of your remark.
Oh, that's a great commercial for Trump to run about 1 million times next year, isn't it? This stuff doesn't play outside of San Francisco. That's a cult meeting inside there.
He's holding up a picture of John McCain during this time.
Figure out why you're putting John McCain's face up.
And the off chance the president's watching, real heroes out there, Pete Buttigieg, others that have served this country. Just a thought.
All right, this went off the rails. All right, Chip, John, thanks a lot. John, we'll have you back and finish that thought. See you guys soon. Kristen?
Yeah, makes no
Chip,
sense.
you're not coming back.
Yeah, right. I don't know why he did that. It's too bad because it really hurts his argument. I mean, assuming he had an argument.
Well, it wasn't part of the argument. He just randomly showed a picture of John McCain.
Exactly.
There's nothing to do with John Hickenlooper discussing socialism in front of that crowd. It was really weird.
Yeah, it was a weird moment.
He put it up as soon as I started talking. I didn't notice it because of the way the transmission works.
It's too bad. I just think it's rude. It's not. I mean, I know Chip and have dealt with him not much. I mean, just like I don't have a real insight into him, but he's always seemed like a pleasant guy. He is that firebrand guy, but that has nothing to do with it either, because he could have been a firebrand, but at least with the argument
instead of started shouting me down over the issue, I would have gotten it.
Exactly.
But to hold up a picture of McCain, which just made everybody stare.
Yeah, it was bizarre. So that's that. So you said, hey, do you know this guy, Chip Franklin? I go, yeah, hey, the guy who held up a picture of John McCain while you were on Fox News Channel? Yeah, I know that guy. I mean, I work with him. I don't really know him very well. I can't tell you why he did it. So let me have the conversation with you that you were going to have on Fox News Channel, but he held up that picture.
Yeah.
So Hickenlooper makes this point about socialism. And the point you were making before you were cut off there, they're going to weaponize that moment where at this meeting of Democrats in San Francisco, the Democrats boo down the idea that socialism isn't what we want. That's kind of what you're saying, yeah?
Yeah, because most people don't really have a clear idea of what socialism is. There's plenty of definitions. Everybody has their own. But I think in general, to the average person, right, in the middle of Nebraska or in New York, socialism sounds like the government takes over everything. The government will take over industries. The government is going to pay for your health care, is going to send you a lot of checks, is going to tax you highly. It's just redistributing everything.
Right.
It sounds like a big operation. And for example, if you want to run on Medicare for all, right, that gets pretty good support. But people think, oh, okay, people without health insurance will get Medicare. When you tell them no, the whole private health insurance industry goes out of business and the government handles all the payments, suddenly the support for that goes, whoo,
right.
Because they don't understand what sounds good in a 3 or 4 word title. When you give them the details, almost instantly they go, whoa, I didn't know it was that. And it's the same thing here. If you actually had a dream to turn America socialistic, boy, that's going to take a long, long time of patient education and patient explanation, and you'd have to have some proof of a few wins. Venezuela doesn't help these days.
Well, that's the other thing that they do. They point to failed states that aren't failed necessarily because of socialism, but are failed because of a lot of other externals. In Venezuela's case, oil, which had supported that economy for so long, didn't support it. Plus, our economic embargoes against Venezuela didn't help them either. That we've kind of isolated them as a nation.
Right, but to the average person, that's too long an explanation. All they see is like 1 million people fleeing Venezuela, which is socialist. They know that works, and that's what the Republican ad's going to be. And the Republican ad is going to be people booing Hickenlooper, who looks like a reasonable person. I don't know much about him, but standing up there, he looks like a generic politician, and you wouldn't think he should be the target of that kind of booing, that kind of outrage.
Well, 2 things. Nobody knows much about him, which is his problem. 2, he is a generic politician, which is also his problem.
Yeah.
But he may have been making an important point. I would say, though, that you're making the more important point than Hickenlooper was, because there are aspects of our economy and there are aspects of government services that are socialist already. I mean, we don't have to change anything. We support, with price supports, agriculture, right? We support the military, the post office. There are all these things. They're socialized, right? The police force, etc. And even this capitalist economy is a mixed economy. We have all of these different price supports built in. We don't really pay the actual price of most things that we buy. There are all kinds of price supports and ways that the market is manipulated. So that is a kind of socialism, because we're all
everybody likes
that.
A little bit of it, especially if they're getting a benefit from it. But, nobody likes the socialism with the big capital S.
I think
it sounds
and that's
scary.
To your point, which is true. The Democrats have to avoid that being the issue. And of course, Trump, you said it a few times already. They want to turn this country socialist. They want to turn this country socialist.
Oh, yeah. He's going to say it a million times, which to me is weird, because obviously there's plenty of legitimate critiques of Trump, right? So you have material there, but you also have to balance it with, well, what are you going to do? How are you going to make life better? Because life for a lot of people economically is better than it was 2 or 3 years ago. And you could spend a lot of time fighting over whether it was Trump's policies or Obama started. It doesn't matter. Things are better. And when economies are running well, people tend not to want to make a change. So you got to come up with a really good reason to make a change. Bringing in socialism is like, it would make people throw their hands up in the air saying, I'm not asking for this. Who asked for this?
If you stop the music for a second just on what you're saying, I wonder if what you're saying isn't going to be rudely interrupted by these tariffs. These trade wars, they will have an effect on the American economy and the American consumer. If it wasn't enough to have one front of trade war going on with China, now he's opening one up with Mexico. Huge trading partner for us. And we have a relationship beyond just trade, right? We have a production relationship, if you want to think of it that way. So I'm wondering if he can get in his own way enough. Like if I had, knowing that he doesn't know anything, I would have said, hey, buddy, congratulations, you made it. Don't touch anything while you're there. Instead, he's touching everything. He's moving every lever and pressing every button he can. Can he ruin what is, as you say, sort of an economy that has worked for many people?
Oh, sure. I mean, any president can ruin a lot of things if they try hard enough. Yeah, sure.
And he's trying hard enough.
Well, yeah. The thing is, he uses a lot of threats and then backs down and wanders away. And he waves a stick a lot. Sometimes that gets people to negotiate. Sometimes people don't want to take a leap into the great beyond. Oh, what's going to happen? They don't want to know what's going to happen. They don't want to debate that maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. It's like, okay, calm down. We don't have to do this. And I think that's what he goes for, is he's hoping Mexican leaders and he's hoping congressional leaders do something about the huge immigration flow, which is worse than we've seen in over 10 years.
Well,
so what he's trying to do is smack people's heads against the wall and say, hey, you want me to go crazy here, I'll go crazy, but you could fix this, and we could.
In the case of the Mexico thing, you're saying linking the tariffs to the immigration flow of people is a way to get everybody's attention.
Yeah.
So it's like his national emergency that he's declared.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, because he can't, there's no way for him, just as president, to stop the immigration flow. He has tried everything and has ran into Congress and the Constitution and judges, and he is extremely frustrated.
Well, I don't know.
So now he's pulling out the crazy stuff.
John, I don't know that he's tried everything. He just keeps slamming this wall thing. I know you believe there should be a wall, too, or I've heard you say it. I don't know if you really believe it.
I'll tell you something. No, there should be a wall. But you know what there should be right now? Is they ought to completely rewrite the asylum laws. Asylum laws are ridiculous, and we had a guest on from the Center for Immigration Studies, Mark Krikorian. He said this is left over from something written in 1980 during the Cold War to handle people in Eastern Europe. This was not, these people who were, I guess, fleeing communists 40 years ago. This was not meant for Guatemala to move here.
I'll say this, the way that Europe has stemmed the flow, because they have stemmed the flow. They have the same problem that we're having, if you want to look at it, this sort of unmitigated flow of refugees. That is much different than people seeking economic opportunity, right? Yeah. Families showing up at the border. These are all Central America. This is not Mexico. These are not Mexican immigrants, as you're well aware.
No, that's what makes it hard.
Right.
Two different laws. Mexican immigrants we could throw back right away. Central American immigrants operate on a different set of laws, and they have exploited this ridiculous asylum privilege.
Even though the official asylees remain at a very low percentage, the way Europe has changed the arithmetic is they changed their asylum laws. They got much tougher on asylum laws. So I don't hear that much from Trump. I hear maybe he's a one-note guy. You're kind of reading a lot into it, unless he's saying this stuff somewhere I'm not seeing.
No, I mean, he has barked about the asylum laws. It's been part of the overall Congress does nothing. The Republicans, when they were in charge, did nothing. When the Democrats were in charge, when it was split between the two parties, no matter what, for about over 30 years now, since the mid-'80s. They've done nothing on any of this. The world has changed drastically. You're seeing real-life repercussions from having bad laws, or non-laws, really. And so he's yelling to do something about it, and for all 100 reasons, nobody wants to touch it. Nobody wants to change anything.
When Trump came to office, Mexican immigration actually was continuing at a negative, as you are aware.
Yes,
That is, more people are leaving the U.S. who are Mexican than were coming in.
Yes.
So he didn't really have this idea somehow that there was an issue with Mexican immigrants was crazy. But the Central American caravans, that's for real. And that's inundating the border.
Yes, and it's going to do these people any good, because I just saw a story yesterday that they're so overburdened at the border, the ICE or Homeland Security, all those agencies, they're putting people on Greyhound buses, and they're showing up by the hundreds in San Bernardino. There are hundreds of Central American immigrants walking off the bus in San Bernardino and walking around. Well, what do we do now? And so the churches in San Bernardino are running around trying to put together programs to house these people and feed them, but there's nowhere to go. Well, and a lot of them are little kids, and a lot of them are sick. This is not rational. This is not. The human race can do a lot better than this system.
There isn't a coherent policy. That's
No.
certainly true. I want to get back to the socialism, though, because the socialism thing is what brought us to the microphones today.
Yeah.
You would agree, certainly, that people in America, many of whom can't take a $500 emergency cost of any kind, many of whom, as you're aware, at the end of their life, which comes sooner than it should, can't pay for the healthcare costs, and as a result, end of life comes sooner. We have a problem with that, right? That's kind of like the immigration issue you're talking about.
The whole healthcare industry is so, I assume it's corrupt. It is so baffling to me. Somebody in my family had a really minor procedure, okay? Maybe 20 minutes, an endoscopy, some light anesthesia. We got a $17,000 bill for it. Now, it was...
Wow.
It was literally nothing, but there was something there that was causing some pain, and it had to be treated. It just had to be treated. It wasn't really an operation. And we got a $17,000 bill. And my wife is on the phone with the insurance company because they want us to pay over $2,000. It shouldn't have even cost $2,000, let alone the $17,000 that the insurance company says. It's like, no, this is absurd. And then I saw another thing the other day, because a lot of Democratic candidates want to give free college in one way or another, right? Which is another socialistic idea. Free college, and I'm looking, the millennial generation, their cost of their education is up 65% in the last 10 years. The general inflation rate is 2% a year. So if it's 2% a year for everything else, how is it 65% for education? Where is all that money going?
No, you're so right. Take your last point first. The cost these universities are imposing on students bears no relation to anything I can find. Nothing. Not the cost of faculty, not the cost of facility, nothing. I don't know where that money is going, as you're saying.
That's the thing. We're kind of going backwards. We want to find a way to pay for this, to pay for all the medical procedures, to pay for college, and nobody is digging into the back end and saying, why the hell does this cost so much? It is not $17,000 for a 20-minute procedure. It is not $75,000 to go to college for a year. It's not.
But which party, and I wish there were more than two, because I think they're kissing cousins, but which party is more likely to go into the healthcare industry and shake it up and go, no. These costs are out of control. These drug prices are out of control. The cost of this procedure that John's talking about is out of control. Who has the balls to take on the insurance companies? I would say neither party, but if I had to go one or the other, I'd go Democrats.
Yeah, but they didn't really blow people away with their last crack at it with Obamacare, because it was it was really complicated and nobody read the bill.
It's an insurance company grab. Anything that brings the insurance companies in as equal parties at the negotiating table is going to end up with something that still has a $17,000 20-minute procedure.
Right. So I mean, it was a timid little marginal fix. I don't even know if it was a fix. I guess it got some people, some coverage. Other people saw their premiums go way up. Some people lost their doctors, and that was a whole controversy. I don't know. It didn't seem there was a lot of headlines about it, but the actual good work it did seems to be very limited.
I feel as though unwinding, the healthcare issues, overcharging and insurance company undercompensating, that it's more and more deductibles, more and more things excluded. I don't feel as though the GOP is...
No.
They're not going after
They never
that.
had a plan. When they finally had control, and for 7 years they said we're going to repeal and replace Obamacare, 7 years of it, when they finally got the power in the first days under Trump, turns out nobody had written down a plan. They didn't even think of it. They were just using it as an issue to whack Obama with. They had no interest in reforming anything.
Yeah.
And that's why they always end up getting kicked out of office, because they betray their own people. The Republicans betray their voters way more than the Democrats betray their voters.
And when you say their voters, you're saying they send a message to the working man, kind of the Joe Six-Pack, pickup truck driving guy going, we're going to get America back, the America you know. And then, of course, they just screw those guys.
They always whiff out on it.
Yeah.
Because they don't really care. They're good at polling and doing focus groups and figuring out how to press people's hot buttons. After they get elected, they never follow up with anything tangible.
Isn't there a blend of, if you want to call it socialism, of some government assistance, a Medicare-type program that you can blend into America's existing healthcare issues to get people some of the healthcare that they desperately need, some of the ongoing healthcare that they can't afford?
I suppose theoretically, but if you ever start talking about healthcare as a normal person with anybody in those industries, your brain goes dead in about 3 minutes.
It's complicated.
It's because really complicated. If somebody could answer my question about getting that $17,000 bill, I mean, I'd love to hear it. I don't know who to call. And it's inexplicable. And I know the insurance companies do some kind of negotiation to drive that down. I don't think they're really paying out the $17,000. I don't understand what goes on. And I don't think anybody in Congress knows what's going on. Trump doesn't know what's going on. Nobody really. All I know is there's plenty of health insurance companies writing big checks to the congressman to keep the status quo. And the status quo is they're making a lot of money.
So if you take socialism as a word out and you just talk about health care, I think that's a net win for the Democrats. Don't you agree?
It worked in their midterm elections. The people that won in those purple districts won by running a local campaign on bettering people's health care. That's what it was. That was the strategy. They didn't go there trying to scream about Trump all day. They didn't go screaming about socialism. They just said, hey, look, you got anybody in your family who's not covered or not covered enough? I'd like to work on that. And that was really effective. That was way below the radar. The whole media covers this whole, is it going to be a wave election? And it's like, well, that's not why people voted. People voted in specific districts because of the message they were getting from their candidates about something that mattered in their lives.
Does Bernie Sanders, who seems to engage so well with so many people, he provokes, of course, the socialist label, but does Bernie Sanders represent a chance for real change, though, of the sort that would be constructive? I mean, this idea somehow that Bernie Sanders is going to, shake up the country and make it socialist. You could have Lenin himself as president, okay? Not John Lennon, Vladimir Lenin. You could have him, the Soviet Union's, shining light of socialism. He could be president of the United States and we're not going to become a socialist country.
No.
It just won't happen.
No, there's Congress.
Yes, exactly.
So the whole Congress isn't going socialist.
Right. I'm just not. I'm not worried.
Bernie has a real strong following with people, like 18 to 30, and I understand why. Because when you had that economic collapse in 2008. That really ruined a lot of people's lives. People came out of college with $100,000, $200,000 in debt, and they couldn't get a job unless it was making coffee. They really couldn't get a job. And actually, for maybe the rest of their life, their income level is going to be behind what they should have earned. Their college debt level is always going to be a burden for them. And I understand as they enter the world, they're hearing about the wonders of capitalism. They're looking around saying, oh my God, this.
No, I got raped by capitalists.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
That's how I got here.
This is the Hindenburg here. What the hell are they talking about? So, Bernie comes along and sings his song, and it seems really attractive. But as it always is, what gets debated is not the real issue. Nobody ever really discussed or explained why there was that Wall Street gambling game going on. Nobody understood how it worked. Nobody ever went to jail over it. All we know is we, paid trillions of dollars to prop up the industry and prop up all the industries that were going to, like the automobile industry that was falling apart. But we still don't know what happened. And if you try to read an article about it, and there is a few, again, after about 10 minutes, your head hurts.
Well, we know what happened. It's just that I would agree that, I would suggest that we know what happened. We know that they packaged these mortgages, which were completely ridiculous. They packaged them as financial vehicles that people could...
We know because we read about this stuff, we live this stuff. But, the average people in the street, they just know there were a bunch of crooks.
Sure. And
nobody... And maybe that's all you need to know.
No,
it's a bunch
to your
of crooks.
point, nobody did time. Nobody did time. No one was held responsible. To me, it's like this Boeing thing. You're telling me that 2 planes can go down, you can kill almost 400 people, and no one is fired and no one is criminally liable for this? And they knew about the lack of safety on this plane.
When you read what they did, you know exactly why the planes went down. Because they cut corners and things were not inspected and they weren't tested. They were trying to do a cheat on the whole process in order to save a ton of money and time. And it's like the whole world is like this. You know, how much money do you think Boeing writes to Congress?
Oh my God!
You know?
Yeah. Well, they're a huge defense contractor.
Yeah, you don't see any hearings on why Boeing had 2 planes crash, right? No, we're going to have another Russia hearing. But people are more afraid of their plane going down. I mean, my wife will not take, when we're planning trips, we're looking, make sure there's no MAX 8, no MAX 9, 737. We're not getting on those. I'm not getting on those.
Sure.
After reading about how they put that thing together, no way.
Yeah.
But that's what the government's supposed to be doing. And that's what makes me crazy about people who are always pushing socialism means government. All right, well, I'm looking at the government. What do I have to deal with? Oh, well, they whiffed on Boeing, didn't they? You can't even get your driver's license at the DMV without waiting for 7 hours. And then they make you back and do it all over again. It's like, if you guys could at least do the DMV, maybe we'd trust you with the healthcare system.
Well, I mean, that is a great argument because we do see the failings of government here and there.
Look at L.A. Look at the garbage everywhere and the homeless situation everywhere. And now diseases are breaking out everywhere. Well, where's the government here? It's not like we don't pay a lot of money in California in taxes. Nobody could say, well, you're not paying your fair share. No, really, we are. And look at it. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, one thing at a time. I'd love for them to go after health care. I think it's a real problem, and I do think that you need government. But the idea that government has been, and government oversight has been MIA is clearly true.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, that's what I'm saying is you got to make people trust it. People don't trust it. Even those who are inclined to want the government to take care of these issues don't really believe that they will. So, yeah, booing socialism? Boy, I mean, that's just a primal response from a bunch of cultists. That's not an intelligent explanation.
Yeah, I don't know if I would boo, but I got his point, but it felt so mainstream. Again, I feel as though, and you addressed it so well as we wrap up here, but you addressed it so well, socialism has become radioactive as a word because people don't understand it. They don't understand that they're living in a mixed society already. We are a socialist culture in many ways, a socialist economic culture I'm talking about. So the idea somehow that everybody, I would never become a socialist. Hey, you are. You're in.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not, it's already happening. But by calling it socialist, as you say, it connotes all of these images of people who are homeless and starving and fleeing Venezuela.
When you do a campaign, you got to be really careful with your words, your imagery, the definitions of what you're doing. If you have just a crowd baying at the moon, socialism, that's scary.
Right.
You're not getting the vote. So this is what I'm saying. It's not that I want one of these crackpots to win, but I'm just fascinated that they don't see this is the worst way to try to win. It's like, what prevents them from seeing that there's a campaign out there that's doable, but this is the worst, the worst option among all of them.
And as you say, this is going to be lifted and then it is replayed and replayed. Wouldn't you rather see anyone on that Democratic stage in the White House instead of Trump?
Me? No. Trump doesn't bother me.
His lack of competence doesn't bother you? You seem like a guy who cares about competence. That's why I asked.
Yeah, I've lowered my standards a lot.
All right. Listen, more for the next time.
Okay.
Thanks for coming, John. That's our big fat show. Something for everybody. J. Elvis Weinstein, the Australian Open tennis champion, Brian Teacher with a great story of divorce, championship, and a reference to Shlomo Glickstein, Ron Placone, and finally, John Kobylt. Thank you for all the ways you show us love, and until next time, bye-bye.
Hello, this is Morgan Freeman. And I want to thank you so much for all the ways that you support my friends on The Edge with Mark Thompson. You know, you can listen on iTunes, Stitcher, Overcast, iHeartRadio, and many places that great podcasts are heard. That's an oxymoron, by the way. Great podcasts. Or you can go to their website, edge-show.com. Well, still haven't purchased a new domain name, I see.